Welcome once again. Today is the feast of St. Matthias, the apostle that was chosen among the community to fill Judas's place. And we read from the Gospel of St. John. Jesus said to his disciples, "As the Father loves me, so I also love you. Remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy might be in you and your joy might be complete. This is my commandment: love one another as I love you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I no longer call you slaves, because the slave does not know what his master is doing. I have called you friends, because I have told you everything I have heard from my Father. It was not you who chose me, but I chose you, and appointed you to go out and bear fruit that will remain. And so whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give you. This I command you: love one another." The Gospel of the Lord. When I reflect on this, I think of the circumstances surrounding St. Matthias becoming the 13th apostle, so to speak. I wonder what the community was experiencing. I wonder what the apostles were experiencing. Here they're reflecting on the fact that one of their original 12, Judas, turned Jesus into the authorities. He was one of them. He was one of their friends. I would imagine it was all sorts of feelings, maybe resentment, but certainly hurt and confusion. And now, what are they to do? Jesus is not stepping in the way he did when he walked the earth before his ascension. And finally, they come to gather the community. They listen. They take a vote. And the Spirit of God descends upon Matthias through the natural human experience of the community called church, and he becomes the other apostle. Jesus says in the Gospel, "My joy is in you, that it may be complete. Do what I tell you. Love one another." Interesting that he says, "My joy will be complete," because initially, like the early church, it can be moments of confusion, of pain, of doubt, of, in a sense, disaster, like they were experiencing with Judas's betrayal. The early church had to trust, had to take a deep breath, if you will, and live out what God said through Jesus. See, loving others, at least in the way Jesus is asking, to me, is often contrary to my natural inclination. I tend to love if I'm left to my own, so that I will find security. I set bounds. I set certain criteria. I look for consolation. And yet when I listen to the commandment of Jesus, he's saying, love everyone under every circumstance. Do not love for human reasons only. Sure, having security, getting gratification, those are normal and good things. But I'm asking you to love. I'm asking you to love for this reason only, ultimately. And that is because you believe I'm there. That I'm there in the moment where loving this person is painful, is difficult. They make it almost impossible for me to see God in the moment. But Jesus says, I'm there. And when you discover that, then you'll discover joy, because you're not doing it because of the individual that's before you. You're not doing it to make yourself happy primarily, but you're doing it because you believe in my presence. That takes so much work, and it takes patience, because for a long time, you have to put up with things, so to speak. Anyone who's dealt with someone with addiction of any kind, drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be, it's a long road. Any of you who are parents know that loving your child is an endless journey, that it's never over. They come through life and they reach a certain age and you say, now they're off on their own. But you never stop worrying. You never stop trying to make it good for them. You never stop giving them advice even though they ignore you. It's part of the deal. It's part of the cost of loving. But ultimately, when I step back, it's great joy. I was talking to a friend of mine this past week, and her husband was a former student, and he passed away a few years ago. And he and his wife, we were reminiscing, and I told him her a story of one of the moments when her husband taught me. He's the father of 5, and he was talking to me one day, and his third child, his first son, was about 5 or 6, and he said that he was a great kid. And he was then at 5, and now at 35, he's a great man. He's really a sweet person in a good sense. And the father was saying to me, it was around Christmas, and they were putting up Christmas lights, and his 5-year-old son wanted to help. And he was driving his father crazy. And his father said to me, and I yelled at him. And after it was over, I felt so bad. And I then, feeling the responsibility of a wisdom figure, wanted to make it better. So I said, well, you don't have to answer this, but it's a thought to reflect upon. Do you look upon your son as something that you own or as a gift? And the father responded to me with a smile. I should and I do look upon him as a gift, but at that moment, I thought I owned him. And I said, and if you thought you owned him, then he really should do what you want, when you want it. And he said, the father, every night I sit at the bedside of my children when they're going to bed. And in that moment of reflection, I realize so clearly that they're gifts from God. The trick is to remember it in the challenge of relationship. And that's what Jesus is talking about. My joy is in you. I'm in you. I'm in the person you're dealing with at the moment. Try to be loving. Try to be patient. Try to do it for me, and you'll find joy. But it's not without cost. We have to carry our crosses. And in loving, it doesn't mean happy ever after endings, but it means making choices, choosing God in the moment, and then trusting in his love. And in that trust and that awareness, we'll experience joy. And remember, at the worst time, with the most difficult person, that they're gifts from God, that they're an opportunity to practice my faith. Have a good day. Continue to pray for one another. God bless.